What if the fiercest enemies you face are not external rivals, not economic pressures, not even life circumstances, but silent forces within your own mind that slowly dismantle your confidence and bury your joy? Imagine realizing that the greatest battles of your life are fought not on the outside, but in the unseen landscape of your inner world. This paradox is exactly what Carl Jung hinted at. The unconscious left unexamined becomes the hidden architect of our suffering. The question then is not whether these enemies exist, but whether you can recognize them before they shape your destiny. Jung believed that at the core of every adult resides the inner child, the psychological representation of our earliest experiences of wonder, creativity, vulnerability, and pain. This child is not simply a memory of innocence, but a living aspect of the psyche that continues to influence thought, behavior, and relationships. The tragedy is that this inner child rarely develops in safety. Instead, it is continuously attacked by patterns of thought and emotion that disguise themselves as discipline, ambition, or protection. Yet in truth, they erode our psychological freedom. Jung's warning was stark. Until the unconscious is made conscious, it will direct your life and you will mistakenly call it fate. The first of these destructive forces is the inner critic. This is not merely the voice of rational self-evaluation, but an internalized judge often shaped in early childhood through exposure to unrealistic expectations, harsh comparisons, or silent disapproval. The critic speaks in absolutes. You are not good enough. You will fail. You should not try. At times, its tone is overtly cruel, echoing the sharpness of past criticism. At other times, it cloaks itself in seemingly reasonable advice. Work harder, do not embarrass yourself, avoid mistakes. Yet beneath the mask of guidance lies one consistent message: you are inherently inadequate. From a psychological standpoint, the critic thrives on cognitive distortions such as overgeneralization, catastrophizing, and negative self-labeling. Over time, these distortions create a closed feedback loop. Every attempt at creativity, risk-taking, or authentic expression is immediately filtered through the critic's narrative, resulting in paralysis, shame, or compulsive overachievement. What makes this enemy particularly insidious is its persistence. Even when external critics are absent, the internalized voice remains functioning like a self-perpetuating mechanism of control. The impact on the inner child is profound. The child whose natural impulse is to play, explore, and create without fear of judgment retreats into silence. Activities once pursued for joy become calculated performances designed to avoid ridicule. Instead of authentic growth, the individual becomes preoccupied with self-protection. What once was a world of imagination transforms into a stage of constant evaluation. Defeating this inner critic requires a disciplined psychological strategy. The first step is awareness to catch the critic in the act and separate its voice from your own authentic self. Writing down the critic's words can often reveal their brutality more clearly than when they remain unspoken. The second step is reframing through self-compassion, treating yourself with the same kindness you would extend to a child or friend in learning. And the third step is deliberate play. Jung valued active imagination because it bypassed the critic and allowed unconscious creativity to resurface. Every act of unjudged play is not trivial, but a direct strike against the critic's dominance. The inner critic will not vanish overnight. It is embedded in years of conditioning. Yet with each moment of awareness and each act of compassion, its power diminishes. The path forward begins with this recognition: you are not defined by the voice that belittles you. You are defined by the choices you make in response to it. As Jung himself reminded us, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. If the inner critic wounds you with words, shame goes deeper. It does not merely accuse you of mistakes, it convinces you that you are the mistake. Shame is one of the most corrosive psychological forces because it does not attack your actions. It attacks your identity. Unlike guilt, which can motivate change by signaling that you violated a value, shame whispers that no matter what you do, you are fundamentally flawed, unworthy, or broken. Carl Jung described shame as a soul-eating emotion, a phrase that captures its relentless capacity to drain vitality, joy, and the will to express oneself. The roots of shame are almost always relational. In early childhood, the need for love and acceptance is paramount. When those needs are not met consistently, whether through overt rejection, subtle disapproval, or even prolonged silence, the child does not usually conclude that the environment is unsafe. Instead, the child concludes, "There must be something wrong with me." This self-blame serves as a survival mechanism. Believing oneself to be defective feels safer than admitting that the caregivers on whom survival depends may not provide unconditional love. The tragedy is that this adaptation becomes an enduring belief carried into adulthood. Shame thrives in silence and secrecy. It convinces you to hide your true feelings, to wear masks of competence, perfection, or detachment so that no one sees the parts you believe are unlovable. Yet the cost is profound. While others may admire the mask, the inner child remains locked away unseen and unheard. This creates a painful paradox. The more you hide, the lonelier you feel, and the more shame convinces you that you must continue hiding. In this way, shame maintains itself like a closed system of self-reinforcing isolation. The psychological consequences of unaddressed shame are extensive. Research links chronic shame to depression, anxiety, social withdrawal, and even addictive behaviors. In practice, shame manifests in small but significant ways. The sudden embarrassment after expressing joy, the harsh self-replay after sharing an idea, or the hesitation to pursue opportunities for fear of exposure. Each of these moments signals that shame has infiltrated the core of self-perception. Defeating shame requires a process of exposure and compassion. The first step is identification, noticing when the heavy voice of shame arises and naming it for what it is. Language creates distance. Saying "this is shame speaking" separates the emotion from identity. You are not shame, you are experiencing shame. The second step is expression. Because shame survives in silence, speaking or writing about it is a radical act of liberation. Journaling, artistic creation, or even confiding in a trusted ally weakens shame's grip by dragging it into the light. The third step is self-compassion. Instead of reinforcing shame with further self-judgment, you counter it with kindness. This does not mean ignoring flaws or mistakes, but remembering that imperfection is part of the human condition, not evidence of unworthiness. From Jung's perspective, healing from shame means reintegrating the rejected parts of the self. He taught that the path to wholeness is not about cutting away fragments, but embracing them. Imagine speaking directly to your inner child who carries shame. Would you tell them they are broken? Or would you hold them and remind them that the shame they carry was never theirs to begin with? This act of reparenting is not sentimental, it is strategic. It restores the inner child's sense of safety, enabling it to emerge from hiding. The essential truth is this: shame cannot survive in the presence of acceptance. The moment you recognize it, speak it, and meet it with compassion, it begins to dissolve. And when it dissolves, the inner child breathes again, discovering that it was never defective, only waiting to be seen. Among the 5 toxic enemies, repression is perhaps the most deceptive. On the surface, it looks like control strength or composure. A person who represses emotions may appear calm under pressure, rational in conflict, and immune to pain. Yet beneath this appearance lies one of the most dangerous dynamics of the psyche: the systematic burying of feelings, memories, and needs so deep that the conscious mind begins to believe they no longer exist. Repression is not the absence of emotion. It is the refusal to acknowledge it. And as Jung warned, what we resist does not disappear. It persists and often grows in size. Repression often begins in environments where emotional expression was unsafe or unwelcome. A child who cried and was told to stop being dramatic, or who expressed anger and was punished for it, quickly learns that authentic emotions invite danger. To survive, the child silences the natural impulse to express. Over time, this silencing becomes internalized as a default strategy. Instead of thinking "I feel sad," the individual unconsciously concludes sadness is not allowed here, and the emotion is locked away. This survival tactic, useful in childhood, later becomes a prison in adulthood. The consequences of repression are not subtle. Repressed emotions do not vanish, they manifest indirectly. They emerge in sudden outbursts of disproportionate anger, in chronic anxiety, in inexplicable fatigue, or in the inability to feel joy. Numbness is one of the most common signs. People who repress often describe themselves as detached, fine, or unaffected, yet beneath the surface lies an accumulation of unprocessed feelings. The inner child suffers most from this arrangement. Imagine a child repeatedly told to stop crying, stop asking, stop needing. Eventually, that child gives up hope that their feelings will ever matter. The result is an internal silence that strangles vitality. From a psychological perspective, repression creates significant long-term risks. Studies on trauma and suppressed emotions reveal correlations with physical illness, heightened stress responses, and difficulty forming intimate relationships. When emotions are consistently repressed, the nervous system remains in a state of unresolved tension, perpetually bracing for threats that never fully arrive. In Jungian terms, repression contributes to the shadow, the hidden aspects of the self that exert influence from the unconscious. Left unexamined, the shadow directs behavior in ways the conscious self cannot understand. Breaking free from repression requires safe, intentional expression. The key word is safe. Flooding oneself with unresolved memories or overwhelming emotions can re-traumatize rather than heal. Instead, progress often begins with small, manageable acts of acknowledgement. Journaling is a powerful tool. Writing freely without censoring thoughts allows buried material to surface gradually. Artistic expression, painting, music, dance, serves a similar purpose, providing form to feelings that have no words. Jung himself advocated active imagination, a process where images and symbols from the unconscious are allowed to emerge spontaneously through creative mediums. These practices bypass intellectual defenses and give voice to the silenced child within. Another critical step is allowing oneself to feel emotions as they arise in the present moment. This requires shifting from suppression to acceptance. If sadness surfaces rather than pushing it down, permit yourself to cry. If anger emerges, channel it into physical movement, writing, or spoken words. If joy appears, allow yourself to laugh without self-consciousness. Each time you validate an emotion, you reassure your inner child that it is safe to exist and express again. Ultimately, the goal is not to eliminate difficult emotions, but to reintegrate them into conscious life. As Jung observed, wholeness is more valuable than the appearance of being good. Repression demands perfection, composure, and silence. Healing requires authenticity, vulnerability, and presence. By creating spaces for safe expression, you invite your inner child out of hiding, teaching it that feelings are not threats but signals, messages from within, asking to be heard. Perfectionism is often celebrated in modern culture as a badge of honor, a sign of discipline and ambition. Yet when examined through a psychological lens, it reveals itself as another enemy of the inner child. Unlike healthy striving for excellence, perfectionism is rooted in fear. The fear that mistakes will expose unworthiness. The fear that acceptance is conditional. The fear that love will be withdrawn unless flawless performance is maintained. Jung described the persona as the mask we wear to face the world, a carefully crafted identity that hides what is fragile within. Perfectionism is one of the most common masks. Behind it, the inner child suffocates, stripped of the freedom to play, to fail to learn. The tragedy of perfectionism lies in its endlessness. No achievement feels sufficient, no milestone satisfying. Success brings only temporary relief before the next standard rises higher. Instead of fostering growth, perfectionism imprisons the individual in an exhausting cycle of self-monitoring and self-criticism. The child within, who once learned through experimentation, now fears mistakes so deeply that curiosity and creativity are abandoned. Life becomes performance, not experience. True selfhood is buried beneath layers of effort designed to earn worth that was never conditional to begin with. The antidote is permission. The permission to be imperfect, to attempt to err, to rest. Each act of play without judgment reopens the door for the inner child to reemerge. Closely linked to perfectionism is the final enemy, the fear of vulnerability. If the critic wounds with words and shame convinces you that you are broken, then fear of vulnerability erects walls so high that neither love nor authenticity can enter. On the surface, this fear masquerades as protection. If you remain guarded, no one can reject you. If you reveal nothing, no one can wound you. But here lies the paradox. The same walls that block pain also block connection, joy, and healing. Vulnerability is not weakness. It is the birthplace of authenticity. Jung understood this when he declared, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Becoming authentic requires risk, the risk of being seen misunderstood, even rejected. Yet it is only through vulnerability that true life begins. To face this enemy, one must begin with honesty. Notice where you hide, which feelings you suppress, which truths you avoid. Then take small, intentional steps toward openness in safe spaces. Share a piece of your story with someone you trust, or express yourself creatively without judgment. Vulnerability will always feel risky, but courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act despite fear. Each time you choose openness over hiding, you tell your inner child that it no longer needs to retreat into the shadows. It is safe to exist, to speak, to be seen. In the end, the critic, shame, repression, perfectionism, and fear of vulnerability are not external enemies but internal habits of mind. Their power lies in invisibility. The moment you name them, they lose dominance. Healing does not mean erasing the past. It means defending the child within, offering it the safety and acceptance it always needed. Jung reminded us that who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. The task is to awaken, to see the child within not as fragile, but as the source of creativity, resilience, and wholeness. Your inner child has been waiting. The choice now is yours. Will you continue living under the grip of hidden enemies, or will you step forward into authenticity, acceptance, and freedom?